Herzlich willkommen zum vierten Apache Hop User Meeting. Jetzt schon, ja, das 5 Jahre Apache Hop, das vierte User Meeting. Ich freue mich extrem über das ganze User-Wachstum. Apache Hop ist gerade in den letzten Monaten, ja, es ist relativ heiß geworden, im Open-Source-Umfeld ein ETL-Tool zu finden. Und deswegen freue ich mich, dass heute sich so viele die Zeit genommen haben und sich hier in das Webinar eingewählt haben. Kurz zum Housekeeping. Die Frage kommt immer. Es wird aufgezeichnet. Ihr bekommt die Aufzeichnung im Nachgang zugesendet. Ihr bekommt alle Slides, die heute gezeigt werden, bekommt ihr auch im Nachgangsmailing nochmal zugesendet. Und das Ganze wird dann auch noch auf unserem YouTube-Kanal, die einzelnen Vorträge, ja, hochgeladen. Thema YouTube-Kanal, ganz cool. Wir haben ja verschiedenste Open-Source-Technologien, ein ThinkSpot, ein Data Hub, Data Catalog, alles im Open-Source-Bereich. Wenn ihr euch für solche Technologien interessiert, lohnt sich auf jeden Fall mal bei uns im YouTube-Kanal vorbeizuschauen. Und wenn ihr das dritte, zweite oder erste Apache Hop User Meeting verpasst habt, könnt ihr da auch die Aufzeichnung euch gerne anschauen. Da sind super Vorträge dabei. Also hier große Empfehlung. Ähm, ja, lasst uns mal kurz auf die Agenda schauen. Wir haben eine vollgepackte Agenda. Wir haben Bart Maertens gleich dabei, der über so die letzten 5 Jahre von Apache Hop mal Revue passieren lässt und spricht, und was natürlich auch in der Zukunft passiert und wie man auch so auf Apache Hop als ETL-Tool migrieren kann, wenn man ein anderes ETL-Tool gerade einsetzt. Wir haben das, was wir, glaube ich, alle immer extrem brauchen, eine effiziente Datenbankmigration. Das sehen wir heute, wie man das mit Hilfe von Metadata Injection macht, am Beispiel von der Eurofunk. Die werden uns mal auf ihr System mal mitnehmen und da können wir uns das mal anschauen, wie das so in der Praxis läuft. Wir werden eine kurze Pause machen, damit wir alle nochmal uns einen weiteren Kaffee holen können und dann auf den letzten Vortrag von Andreas Korte und Tom Haupt zu sprechen kommen. Die nutzen Apache Hop als Middleware-Lösung mit für ganz viele Schnittstellen, verschiedenste Systeme, unter anderem auch Salesforce und verschiedene Datenbanken. Die haben solche Probleme wie, was ist mein Master-Datensatz, der dann ins Salesforce geladen wird. Das sehen wir heute alles mit Apache Hop. Also das ist sehr, sehr spannend, vollgepackte Agenda, also lohnt sich auf jeden Fall dran zu bleiben. Bevor wir in die einzelnen Vorträge reinstarten, möchte ich auch ganz kurz darauf eingehen, was machen wir als it-novum? Wir bieten natürlich im Umfeld von Apache Hop Beratung, Consulting, auch wenn ihr andere ETL-Tools gerade im Einsatz habt, lasst uns darüber sprechen, ob eventuell es sinnvoll ist, auf Open Source, auf Apache Hop zu gehen. Wir helfen euch natürlich auch bei einer Implementierung, wenn ihr frisch starten wollt, wenn ihr andere Tools ablösen wollt. Das ist überhaupt kein Problem für uns, das ist unser täglich Brot. Wenn ihr mit unstrukturierten Daten arbeiten wollt, wenn ihr euch das mal angucken wollt, NoSQL-Datenbanken, MongoDB, wenn ihr bis jetzt nur mit relationalen Datenbanken zu tun gehabt habt, können wir gerne in einem Workshop das erarbeiten. Wenn ihr irgendwelche unstrukturierten JSON oder Nested JSON-Files habt, haben wir alle schon umgesetzt, können wir euch jederzeit helfen. Wenn ihr das Ganze im Einsatz habt, wir bieten natürlich auch Support an. Neben dem klassischen Community- oder Hersteller-Support haben wir einen Solution-Support. Das heißt, wir kümmern uns um eure Solution und halten die am Laufen. Natürlich also bieten wir Trainings und Schulungen an. Wir haben verschiedenste oder mehrere Trainer im Haus, die Apache Hop nutzen. Unter anderem auch der Tom, der den letzten Vortrag halten wird. Da wird dann auch noch mal ganz kurz auf den Schulungsinhalt eingehen, wie wir das Ganze umsetzen. Und natürlich bieten wir auch eine POC-Durchführung an, um da zu gucken und Apache Hop auf Herz und Nieren zu testen. Long story short, wenn ihr irgendwelche Apache Hop-Fragen habt, sind wir eure Ansprechpartner im deutschsprachigen Raum. Und ja, damit würde ich sagen, genug der Werbeveranstaltung. Wir gehen in den ersten Vortrag rein. Ich muss kurz auf Englisch switchen, weil wir haben hier Bart Maertens. Er ist Co-Founder vom Apache Hop. And yeah, hello Bart. I'm glad that you're here. I'm looking forward for your presentation.
Hi, morning. Glad to be here. So let me share my screen. Yeah, we'll take a moment to, well, like you said in the introduction, Philip, we'll have a look at what happened in 5 years of Apache Hop, where we are now, and what we'll do in the next 5 or whatever years in the future, basically. So yeah, like Philip mentioned, I'm a PMC member, project management committee member for Apache Hop. I co-founded Hop in 2019, and I've spent yeah, quite a bit of time building and working on Hop in the past. Um, First of all, why would you choose Apache Hop? A couple of things have changed quite drastically in the last 5 years since we started Apache Hop. Both the Pentaho Community Edition and the Talent Community Edition, the open source talent offering, have disappeared from the market. So Apache Hop is now the well, not the only, but one of the most important open source platforms that are available as true open source, that are active as projects that continue to evolve. So that's a first important aspect. Um, Modern data and engineering as a project from the very start, our goal was to integrate with all of the modern data platforms that we have in current data architectures, whether that is on-premise, in the cloud, streaming data, batch, you name it. We want to integrate with as many platforms as possible. Community. As an open source project, especially as an Apache project, building a community is crucial. Actually, when we'll have a look at the process of becoming an Apache project in a moment, but when we entered the Apache Software Foundation as a podling, as a candidate Apache project, building a community is as important, if not more important, than building software. We had a tagline a while ago, great communities build great software, and that is absolutely true. Having an active community that uses Apache Hop, that tests features, that gives feedback, that contributes back in a variety of shapes and forms is incredibly important for a project. We have a couple of statistics here. The LinkedIn page keeps growing. Twitter, people on this chat keep growing. Our visits on the website continue to grow. Actually, I can show that in more detail. But globally, we have communities in South America, North America, the US, and Canada. In Asia, about a third of our website visitors are in Europe, and of the European visitors, we have about 20% in Germany. So a large community in Germany, and hopefully large and growing. We have 10 PMC members. So a project management committee is the committee that votes on releases, discusses features on the mailing lists. We have 24 active committers. Committers are people within an ASF, an Apache Software Foundation project that have an official committer status. In addition to that, we have 84, could be more right now, but 84 people who actively contributed on the GitHub repository, 7,500 commits, about 1,000 stars, and a couple of statistics again on the community in terms of the chat LinkedIn page. Link to the LinkedIn page will be at the end of the slide. So if you are not following Hop there, feel free to do so. We post regular updates on releases and other intermediate updates there. And we try to release every other month. We skip a release over the summer, but we have been consistently releasing about five releases per year. Why would you use Apache Hop as a business? First of all, I mentioned that a couple of times already. I will repeat that a couple of times going forward. But being truly open source is important. As an Apache project, I mentioned the community, I mentioned the contributions, and that is what Apache projects are all about. One of the most important aspects of being a community, of being an Apache open source project, is that we discuss new features, bug fixes, the entire development process of the project in a community, as a community, and we won't have one single company driving the roadmap, the development of a project. I won't mention any names, but there are multiple open source projects, commercial open source projects that are open source in nature, but where the entire roadmap, the bug fixes, you name it, are controlled by a single company. We won't have that in an Apache project. That is crucial. Then visual development. We continue to develop Hub GUI, the visual user interface that you use to build, to develop, to test, to in the future deploy your projects, your workflows, your pipelines, your entire data engineering project. Flexibility, we want to be compatible with the three major cloud environments, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, not in a specific order. But you can also run Apache Hop in an on-premise setup on your own infrastructure, in a default installation, in Docker, in Kubernetes. We want Hop to be as flexible as possible so you can run it wherever you want without having to, we don't want to enforce any specific requirements on your architecture, on your infrastructure. Scalable. Data in a lot of projects comes in a variety of shapes and forms, going from small projects that handle kilobytes, megabytes of data up to terabytes, petabytes, and we want to support all of that. We have the native engine, similar to the PDI, the kettle engine that you may have used, that you may be familiar with, up to large big data projects that run on Apache Beam, and Apache Beam is another Apache project. But Beam is a layer that runs on top of Apache Spark, Apache Flink, Google Dataflow, and lets you run your Apache Hop pipelines with 0 to no modification on distributed systems. So scalability from kilobytes, megabytes up to terabytes, petabytes. And again, community support with the open source nature of Apache Hop. We continuously work to build, support a strong and growing global community of Apache Hop users, contributors, developers, everything that is involved in the development and support of an Apache project. A quick look at the timeline. We mentioned 5 years of Apache Hop. We started in the summer of 2019 with a fork of PDI 8.2.0.7. That was a release that contained a couple of important bug fixes and didn't introduce a number of regressions that came later. So we picked that release to start working. And we started doing a lot of cleanup, a lot of architectural redesigns. And in 2020, about a year later, we entered the Apache incubator. The incubator process is a process where all Apache projects have to go through, where you create a proposal to explain why you think donating a project as an Apache project is a good idea. In the incubator process, the podling, the candidate Apache project learns to work in the Apache way. All of the communication has to go through mailing lists. All of the decisions have to be done through a voting process. But more importantly for you as an Apache Hop user is that in that incubator process, we also check all of the code, all of the branding for copyright, licensing violations. And when we graduated as a top-level project a year later, we were sure that there were no license violations. We had a couple of issues in the original source code where libraries were incorrectly licensed or had a license that was not compatible with the Apache software license. All of those components had to be removed, rewritten. So you can be rest assured that the Apache code that you use has been checked and is okay in terms of copyright, in terms of licensing. And of course, that is an ongoing process. We check all of the new dependencies that are added to the project for Apache license compatibility for copyright violations. So that's another advantage that you get from working with an Apache project. We graduated in late 2021 as a top-level project. That was a big milestone for us. And then over the course of the last couple of years, we continuously kept updating. I already mentioned the five releases per year, and that has only sped up, only continued. We are on track to have our fifth release out by the end of the year, late November, early December, and we'll continue developing, but more on that in a moment. Well, as no BI, we also have a couple of offerings that help you to reliably run Apache Hop in production. We're working on a number of plugins that make it easier to integrate with a number of enterprise platforms without having to go through individual REST API calls, parse JSON, do pagination. We'll make that process easier. We'll generate technical documentation. We'll provide a monitoring perspective that lets you visually see what has been going on in your Apache projects, in your Apache Hop projects, how long your pipelines have been running, where the issues were. And of course, we offer support, a knowledge base, e-learning, and all of that will expand in 2025. If you're currently using PDI, Kettle, Pentaho Data Integration, or any other data integration platforms, Talent, for example, and are considering Apache Hop. For PDI, we have an importer that lets you just import a Pentaho project into your Apache Hop environment, converts transformations and jobs to pipelines and workflows, creates an Apache Hop project with your database connections, does a bit of cleanup, and makes the transition to Apache Hop pretty straightforward. We have a couple of tools to support you there, but more importantly, it's a step-by-step process that makes the transition as easy as it gets. You need to do a lot of testing, but basically moving from PDI to Apache Hop is a matter of doing the code conversion, converting all of the jobs and transformations to workflows and pipelines, making sure that everything works correctly. But the process is pretty smooth. In the 5 years that we have been developing Apache Hop, we changed almost every single line of code behind the scenes. But we still have that shared history of XML serialization, so we can convert your jobs and transformations to Apache Hop workflows and pipelines pretty easily. The active release cycle, I mentioned that a couple of times. We have releases about every other month. 5 releases per year. And we continue to build releases, to build new features, do bug fixes. Actually, bug fixes are an important one. We've been working quite hard on hardening, making Apache Hop as robust and as stable as possible for the last couple of releases. And for example, in the latest releases, 2.9, 2.10, we have made some improvements in the file explorer perspective. It's now easier to work with multiple file types. Git integration has improved significantly. We added a couple of functionalities to block certain code in scripts, in code plugins. There is improved support for Azure. You can now add multiple Azure storage accounts. We'll do the same for AWS and Google Cloud Storage in the future. There are a number of features that actually came from organizations that are migrating from Talent to Apache Hop. We have a static schema definition, for example. So every release brings some new and important improvements and functionalities to Apache Hop. Second part, we talked about where Apache Hop came from, where we are now, what will we be working on in the near future. And well, this is visualized as a slope, but there's no real importance, no real hierarchy. What we will continue to work on is the first one, VFS refactoring. I already mentioned the Azure storage improvements in 2.9, 2.10. We'll continue to work on that for Azure and other cloud storage platforms. VFS, virtual file system, is a system that is, well, deeply embedded in Apache Hop and lets you access every file or as a URL. So you can access files over FTP in an S3 bucket in Azure Blob Storage over a URL without having to do configuration in individual transforms or workflow actions. And we'll, like we did for Azure, we'll work on multiple multi-account support for the other providers. So you will be able to start up your Hub project with a global configuration for Azure storage, for AWS, but also have multiple accounts. So you will be able to switch accounts, read from bucket 1, write to bucket 2 with different permissions. A marketplace is something that we'll work on. There is a growing number of plugins that are available. There's an external plugins repository for plugins that we couldn't or that weren't included in the initial Apache Hop releases. There are, well, it-novum has plugins for SAP. There are GIS plugins. And we want to make it easier for plugin developers to make those plugins available for Apache Hop users through a marketplace. And yeah, a lot of the plugins in that marketplace will be available for free. There will also be an option to allow commercial plugins. So that's, coming in 2025. We'll work on improved Kubernetes support. We already have Helm charts that allow you to run Hop workflows, pipelines in Kubernetes pods, Hop server in Kubernetes pods, but we'll work on improving that significantly. Another important one is improved metadata management. From the very early days, PDI cattle already, metadata has been at the core of PDI. That metadata is what drives your workflows and pipelines, transformations and jobs in PDI. But in Hop, we want to take that one step further and really make metadata a first-class citizen. That will allow you to do basic things that are currently not yet possible. Things like refactoring a workflow or a pipeline, rename a workflow or a pipeline, and then see what the impact is on other workflows and pipelines in your project. Same for database connections, for example. If you rename or delete a database connection, what is the impact on other items in your project? Find a dependency tree. So if you export a workflow or a pipeline, what are the metadata items that need to be included? What are the variables that you need from your environment files, and so on. And then generic graph database support. Apache Hop has excellent support for the Neo4j graph database. There are about 20 plugins that let you read data from Neo4j databases, write to Neo4j databases, execute Cypher scripts, and so on. But with the graph database market that is maturing and evolving into more openness with support for OpenCipher, growing support for the Bolt protocol, we want to extend that support in Apache Hop and turn the Neo4j specific functionality into a more generic support, similar to what we have currently with database connections, where you have a database dialect for Postgres, Oracle, SQL Server, and so on. We want to do something similar, where you have graph database functionality that works on Neo4j, different versions of Neo4j, but also on memgraph, AWS Neptune, and a couple of other graph databases that are gaining in popularity. And then last but not least, improved Apache Beam integration. I already mentioned Beam earlier on. Beam is the layer, the Apache Beam project is a layer that lets you run pipelines on distributed platforms like Apache Spark, Apache Flink, Google Dataflow. And we currently have support for, well, those three engines. You can run your Apache Hop pipelines on Spark, on Flink, on Dataflow, but there are inputs, outputs, IOs in Apache Beam terminology that we don't support yet. We want to extend the number of inputs, outputs that we support. We want to increase the number of integrated automated tests that we have to make sure that what works in Apache Hop also works on Beam over Spark, over Flink, over Dataflow. So yeah, a lot of work going on there as well. I mentioned the Apache Hop community. If you are using Apache Hop, it's in your own personal interest to be part of the community, so you are aware of what is going on, of what is happening. If you contribute, you can benefit from other people's contributions, and helping to make Apache Hop better with every release. Contributions are different in Apache Hop compared to a lot of other Apache projects, in the sense that our user community is not as developer oriented as it is in a lot of other projects. So we consider contributions to be a very broad term. We consider documentation contributions, samples, blog posts, everything that you can do to help Hop, to make Hop easier to use, more accessible, is a very valid contribution. We have tutorials, how-to guides, forums. We're switching to GitHub discussions and the ASF Slack in favor of our current Mattermost chat, to make everything more accessible, more publicly available. So that's another part where you can have where you can help engage in discussions on GitHub, and help other users answer questions, learn from questions that other people asked. And getting started with Hop is easy. Just go to hop.apache.org, download the latest release, follow the Getting Started guide, and if you're currently using PDI, import your jobs and transformations, convert them to Apache Hop, and see how that works for yourself, for your project. So that is about everything I had to share. Feel free to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn. Yeah, these are the no BI accounts, but the Hop accounts are available as well. Yeah, happy to see you in the Apache Hop community.
Thank you
Any
very
questions,
much.
Philip?
Yeah, thank you very much. One personal question. You mentioned it, but I want to point it out. Can you say some words about the move from Mattermost to GitHub chat? Yeah, so
Yes.
where can new users find the community? So it's not on Mattermost.
I will include all of those links in the slides when I share them. But there is a blog post that explains the reasons why we switched from Mattermost to GitHub discussions and the ISF Slack in more detail. But in a nutshell, what it comes down to is that even though Mattermost is publicly available, everyone can create an account, everyone can join the channels. The chat format is not always the most straightforward to find historical answers. Searching answers in previous discussions is not always easy. Finding the history of previous discussions is not possible, since Mattermost is behind a login. It's impossible to index for Google, for other search engines, and that will be different if we move those discussions to GitHub discussions and the ASF Slack, of course. The added advantage in GitHub discussions is that we'll have more long form questions. The nature of chat is good to have quick questions and answers, but it lets people just ask a quick question, quick answer, and the communication is very scattered, very distributed, and that will be different, will be more organized if we move to GitHub discussions with a clear topic where a discussion can be marked as resolved, can be linked to a GitHub issue. We will basically move the discussions a lot closer to the actual code, and to the tickets that we work on. It's
Great to
discussions
hear.
as code, basically.
Yeah, great. We will share the links, and then the community grows on the GitHub discussion.
Yes, happy to see you there.
Very good. I have one question from the community, so I have to translate it. So what are the risks and checks to perform from migrating from PDI, Kettle, or other platforms to Apache Hop?
Well, there is a difference between other platforms. Let's say other platforms are redevelopment. We looked at building automated migrations from a couple of other platforms, Talent, Matillion. And even though the functionality looks similar, the way other platforms work behind the scenes makes it, even though you can translate some functionality from platform XYZ to Apache Hop, the internals are different, so it might make sense to redesign and redevelop. If you're migrating from PDI to Apache Hop, that is not the case. The import process is pretty straightforward. You can import your jobs and transformations into an Apache Hop project and start testing. The process is not hard. There are a couple of things that you have to look out for. If you use a lot of scripting, if you use user-defined Java class, for example, you may have Pentaho code that needs to be converted to Apache Hop code. There are, well, if you use a lot of formula steps in PDI, you'll have to be you have to test the formulas in Apache Hop. I mentioned a couple of licensing compatibilities between PDI and Apache Hop when we started the fork. The formula step was one of them that uses a LGPL library, so we had to rewrite the formula transform in Apache Hop that now uses Apache Poi. Apache Poi is a project behind formulas in LibreOffice, OpenOffice. So we have a lot more Excel-like functionality, but we had to convert all of the PDI formulas to Apache Hop in the migration process. So that requires testing. We do have a couple of automated checks that you can run on your Pentaho projects to see where the tricky areas are. The things that I mentioned, a couple of other things are database connections, database configurations that are managed a lot more strictly in Apache Hop than they were in PDI. So there may be some cleanup to do, but we can help with all of those. And the process is, code conversion testing, and then start using all of the added functionality that is available in Hop and wasn't available in PDI, projects and environments, unit testing, and tons of new plugins.
Great. I have another question in the chat. Thank you for doing this in English. It's easier for me. I read it. Are there main contractual differences between PDI and Hop, especially for configuration? What's the difference between PDI and Hop, like the kettle properties, especially?
Well, yeah, that is the big difference. What we saw, personally, I started using PDI in 2004, 2005. So a long time ago. And the struggle that we saw with a lot of PDI projects is that people started building scripts to change or to create copies for development, UAT, production of their kettle properties. That is a lot easier in Apache Hop. In Hop, you can create a project, attach a environment for development, UAT, production, and have a number of configuration files to just switch between different environments. So that is, and we convert those kettle properties, share.xml, jdbc.properties, by the way, in the import process for Apache Hop. But life cycle support is one of the big enhancements in Apache Hop. The unit testing that I mentioned is another important one that lets you validate your pipelines against golden data sets. So you not only know that your pipelines, your workflows ran without issues, but you can also validate that the data is processed exactly the way you expected. There are a couple of others. There are improvements in the way we perform loops, for example. But in terms of configuration, those are a couple of important ones. And with the projects, we have improved integration for Git. The entire project lifecycle support is something that we worked hard on in Apache Hop. And I started, I may not have mentioned it, but I'm not biased. I'm biased, I'm not neutral. But project lifecycle support is significantly improved in Hop compared to PDI.
Yeah, the next question is all about lifecycle management. I read it. How do we manage project and environments when deploying between different environments? How does it work?
Yeah, so I mentioned the projects, the different environments that you can attach to a project. An environment is one or a couple of JSON files where you basically consider your project to be the code and your environments to be the configuration. For example, if you create a database connection, what you would do in your project is create variables for the database host, port, database name, username, password, and then add environments where you specify values for those variables. So you'll have your host, username, port, whatever for development, for UAT, for production in a different set of environment files. You can keep your project in Git, your environment files in, for example, a separate private Git repository. And if you deploy to production, well, to UAT, to production, you just specify the corresponding environment files, environment name, and use that to run in Hop run, in Docker, in a Kubernetes pod, for example. So that's, it's a set of code that is your project and a set of configuration files per environment that you use to deploy in dev UAT prod.
Great, thank you. Another question from Peter. Are there any plans to implement ETL features, keyword query pushdown?
Keyword pushdown, can you elaborate?
Yeah, no, it's not.
I think query pushdown, yeah, ELT, sorry, I understand.
Yeah,
We talked about that. Hasn't happened yet, but it's something we could consider. We talked to, well, Vertica, Snowflake, to have, well, basically what you do in ELT is onboard your data and then transform in within the database. You could already do that by just onboarding your data and then run a SQL action script, basically. But we could consider implementing ELT functionality, for example, in the dimension lookup transform. So instead of doing your slowly changing dimension updates through individual SQL DML statements, you could do them within the database. Good idea, but it hasn't happened yet.
Great, thank you. So there are no other questions. If you have any other questions, you can type in the chat and we answer it later via email or something else. Bart, thank you very much. I'm looking forward for next year, the 5th Pentao user meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.